It's time for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now.
That theory about, the corporations. Listen, I could be totally wrong. I don't think that there's too many people that are important enough for a corporation to want to do all this to.
Yeah.
There's only one person, and I really mean this when I say this, and I know this is straight conspiracy theory. There's only one person I believe in Hollywood who people conspired to actually take down.
Who?
I'm talking about a mass conspiracy. Anytime they take you down, it's people conspiring, but it's usually because you did some shit.
Yeah.
But I think that there's one person who they really took down because he had too much power, and I believe that person was Michael Jackson.
Wow.
I truly believe that. And the reason I believe that is because you can look into the story. We had Deion Cole on Breakfast Club today. Deion Cole told us a story about how he got high with Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney told him, Paul McCartney and Michael used to be real cool. Paul was telling Michael, like, yo, you got to get your business together. You got to get your business right. He told him about the publishing game.
He bought the Beatles publishing.
Michael ended up getting so big that he bought the Beatles publishing. The Beatles publishing was worth so much that literally Sony gave Michael Jackson half of their publishing company just to own the Beatles catalog. So whenever you used to see, look it up. Whenever you used to see Sony ATV, that was Sony, and ATV was Michael Jackson's publishing company, right? Imagine how powerful a black man is when he owns half of or majority of the music industry's publishing.
In this round, here's Quan LX.
Charles, that was our brother Charlemagne the Great. He calls himself Charlemagne the God, and famous radio host out of Los Angeles. And he was speaking on his podcast show about what he believed was the one conspiracy that he does believe to bring down a musical figure that became so powerful and so threatening with his influence and power that they wanted to get rid of him, ultimately killing him. He spoke about brother Michael Jackson, how Michael Jackson owned and purchased the Beatles catalog. And once he did that, he literally became so powerful there was nothing the music moguls could do and executives could do in Hollywood or around the world to control Michael Jackson any longer. He had became just as big as them. But what he did not say, Michael Jackson also purchased and bought Elvis Presley's catalog. Did you know that? Then turned around and married Elvis Presley's daughter. And it was at that point that he angered so many that they decided it was time to get rid of Michael Jackson, and they resurrected the old allegations of child molestation and had him set up to be tried in Simi Valley, California on those same exact charges. And so Brother Michael is now dead, and still to this very day, they're still fighting to control that brother's estate. I agree with Charlemagne the God. I believe the attack on Michael Jackson's character, his subsequent prosecution and acquittal, was all purposely intended to destroy the power he had grown and developed in the music industry.
I couldn't disagree more. First of all, Charlemagne is a brilliant, nice, interesting person. I've been on the Breakfast Club as his guest. He's a fascinating guy. I really like him, right? But he takes some positions that I disagree with. But Charlemagne also doesn't hesitate to disagree with people, right? He is one of the few people left in this country where you can be vehemently opposed to his mindset or his outlook or perspective on something, and he's still going to have a conversation with you, which I have a tremendous amount of respect for. But this, first of all, I don't believe that Michael Jackson purchased Elvis Presley's publishing. I think the daughter sold that to private equity much later. That I don't think that is accurate.
That's very accurate.
I do think that Michael Jackson.
Read her book.
Let me talk about Joe. So I believe, although it's just my personal belief, I believe Michael Jackson was chemically castrated by his father. There's been a lot of scuttle about that to protect his voice at a young age, that he was the breadwinner. And I think it had long-lasting impact on how Michael lived his life. I do not believe that Michael Jackson, and I was huge, first album, first record, it was actual record, a vinyl record that I ever bought in my life was Thriller, right? Since I was a little kid, I've been a huge fan. I had the parachute pants, I had the penny loafers, I had the sequin glove. I mean, I was like 7, 8, 9 years old, huge fan, right? I do not believe that I'm also somebody that's investigated sexual assaults, both as a police officer and as an attorney. I believe that there was a money grab. I believe that he was just weird in his life because he couldn't be a true adult because of what his dad did to him. I don't believe that he was a sexual predator. I think that all of the allegations that he were driven by people in the government, in local government, prosecutor offices that wanted to make a name for themselves by destroying the man. So I'll agree that I think a portion of the government tried to tear Michael Jackson down. I do not think it was a grand conspiracy attached to his wealth or his ownership of the Beatles publishing or a success. I think you had local law enforcement who wanted to put a feather in their cap of destroying, and you had those evil parents, now I could be wrong, this is just my opinion, who were trying to monetize and get more from Michael Jackson. Now, I could be wrong on that, right? I haven't seen everything. I don't have all the evidence. I haven't spoken to the victims. But I think we have someone that was a deeply flawed and troubled person because he suffered tremendous abuse. We talked about this earlier in the week, sexual abuse or other types of physical abuse on children and how it impacts in relation to Combs.
To the conspiracy that you suggest.
No, there's plenty of proof.
That his father chemically castrated his son.
There's plenty of proof that
I
Joe
think that's
Jackson
absolute lie.
was an absolute abusive monster to his children.
He was abusive, it's true, because he was so much of an authoritarian figure. And he had such great demands and high standards for them in the music industry where he pushed them too far. But to say that the man chemically castrated his son so his son could have a longer music career, come on, man, that's awful.
He clearly had huge issues.
You sound like a jackass with that one.
He had huge issues with self-loathing. We look what he did to himself with plastic surgery. This was a handsome, talented young man.
His daddy didn't do that.
I get that. But he taught
when he wanted to have more.
His dad taught him to hate himself.
No, that's not true.
His dad taught him to hate himself.
His dad did not teach Michael Jackson to hate himself for the broadness of his nose, the thickness of his lips, or the darkness of his skin, or the texture of his hair. It was white supremacy to taught Michael Jackson.
I don't disagree.
He needed a thinner nose.
I don't
He needed
disagree
thinner lips. His skin needed to be more white. His hair needed to be more straight. That was white supremacy who did that, not the Jackson family.
He strove to look like a handsome, classic, not white, maybe something like a Persian male. He was clearly trying, even with the talk about vitiligo, which I don't really think was true. He changed his skin color,
looking like Serena Williams.
Appearance. He did all this to change himself because he was a deeply troubled man.
Oh, was that Venus who did all?
He was looking.
Which one was it? Venus?
I don't know why you're talking about the Williams sisters. They are both wonderful.
Well, one is still black.
Incredibly
the other one looked like she transitioned like Michael Jackson right now.
It's very weird where you just decide to hate on strange people. I'll give you another one. Sammy Sosa. I mean, what happened to Sammy Sosa? And I think it's sad when he. Hey,
I'll give you another one.
Hey, I'll give you one.
Look him.
I'll give you one right now. What I'm talking about, there's some of us that embrace being bald.
Look him.
There's some of us that embrace the bald, and there's some of us that put that fake hair on top of our heads. I ain't gonna say any names, Quadell. I ain't gonna say no names.
Let me say
this. Some people, they got that fake hair splayed down on their head because they don't love themselves.
Let me say this.
Why don't you love yourself, Quadell?
If you look at my hair real closely, you see.
Why don't you love yourself,
Ain't nothing fake about this one, baby.
Okay.
But you just hate the fact that you look 90 and I still look 40. You hate the fact that my skin is so black and beautiful. You got that dry, rusty, raggedy skin, and I got that smooth, beautiful,
skin. I'm ashy.
shea butter skin.
I'm ashy. Give me some shea
butter skin. You need some baby oil.
You know what's interesting, Alex, to your point, what I'm finding as I travel? People who 2 years ago, before Roe v. Wade was overturned, people who felt very strong about that they are anti-abortion, are now seeing what's happening and saying, I didn't intend for all this to happen. And I think that's also why in state after state, so-called red states and so-called blue states, when this issue has been on the ballot, the American people are voting for freedom.
In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Yeah, I think that was a very good point that Kamala Harris was making on the campaign trail about abortion. I think that Kamala has tapped into a few of the issues that are the reason why we didn't see Republicans take the Senate in the midterms and why that she has a very strong chance still of winning despite her refusal to mostly engage with the media. She's being very controlled. Most of it's pre-recorded. She did something with 60 Minutes that got a little bit combative, but it's clear the media has been muzzled, whereas you see Donald Trump will go sit down on a stage at a National Association of Black Journalists and confront journalists that he knows don't care for him. She has been very controlled because she doesn't do a very good job interacting with the media. And in fact, this quote and what we're talking about is not what she said, but it's from a podcast. She can't do interviews with real journalists, and they're too cowardly to talk about it, but she'll do podcasts. She did a podcast with 2 former NBA players. Now she's doing Call Her Daddy, which is a hyper-sexualized podcast. I think the host's name is Alex Cooper. And I think an episode a couple of weeks ago was all about oral sex. And instead of sitting around with people that are going to pepper her with hard questions so she can give the hard answers the American people need to hear, instead she's sitting down with podcasters who are agreeing in advance what questions they're going to ask her, and they're giving her team far much control. I think it's absolutely absurd. I think she gave a very good answer. But damn it, our candidates, especially this one, need to start engaging with our free press.
But that's the state of America today, Charles, because many don't know that some of these social media platforms now have platforms just as big as mainstream media outlets.
Bigger. Call Her Daddy's a juggernaut.
And let me say this.
Top 5 podcast.
And I kind of looked up when we were talking about this, I kind of looked up a little on TikTok with some of the subject matter. And they talk about a lot of sexual stuff. Yeah. If a woman should swallow, if a woman should spit.
Swallow or spit what? like Listerine, mouthwash?
No, ain't no Listerine, homie. I'm talking about that vanilla ice cream. Well, I'm just telling you what's on the show. And they was talking about, doggy style, which is better, which position's better, and talk about having multiple partners.
Hey, Doggy, what are you talking about?
This was on the Daddy show. They call me Daddy, the Daddy Gang show. Multiple partners at the same time. Sound like a Diddy freak-off party.
Okay.
But she goes and sits down with them.
But she didn't talk about no freaking deep.
But she went for one reason, because she know she was not going to get any real tough, legitimate questions about policy.
That's my problem.
About her history and practice as VP, her success or failures. And so that's why she went on that show. The question is, are the American people so gullible to accept that's how we're going to do it now, and no longer ask politicians the real tough questions anymore? Is that the way we're going now?
Well, it is clearly the way we're going, because we have a politician that the media finds abhorrent, and many Americans find Donald Trump abhorrent for very legitimate reasons. But he has always been criticized for engaging the press, and he engages them aggressively. He says ugly things, he can be rude, but at least he's engaging.
He doesn't run from them.
She has not only hidden from them, the media has been silent about that hiding because they are afraid if they report on it, they'll lose any chance at access, which is insane. This is a candidate that was not elected, not chosen as a candidate through a primary process.
Media anymore, though, in America.
I don't know if we ever did,
because
but it's gotten out of control.
CNN is pro-Harris, anti-Trump.
Okay.
Fox, pro-Trump, anti-Harris.
But Fox News, and you can't say Fox Soul's not, but Fox News is.
Fox National News.
Right.
And I don't mean Fox Soul, of course not. But MSNBC, now that's a joke. They so far to the left, it's not even real anymore.
But on the flip side, at least MSNBC wears their liberalism on their sleeve.
Oh, they're honest about it.
Fox News wears their conservatism on the sleeve.
And CNN does too.
No, CNN's far more nefarious. CNN, the New York Times, and other legacy and traditional journalism formats, they pretend to be journalists.
To be neutral.
They pretend to be neutral when they're anything but. Like, clearly, this is an opinion show. This is not marketed as a news journalism show.
But it's marketed at what it is. This is a show that is designed to speak the raw, unadulterated truth, to say what millions of Americans would like to say, but they can't say because of fear of retaliation and retribution.
But here's the thing.
So this show is doing exactly what it was structured to do. Be the voice of the voiceless and speak for that silent majority who can't speak their minds freely.
Well, you look at it. So we have an allegation that Doug Emhoff, that Kamala Harris's husband, is alleged to have been violent with a prior girlfriend, alleged to have knocked up a nanny when he was married to his first wife. All these horrible things. That if Trump was alleged to do it,
Was that Diddy she was
top
married
of the
to?
top of the headline.
Was she married to
right?
Diddy?
It'd be all over America, and we have this we're not talking about it because journalists are ignoring it because it's on the other side. And if Kamala Harris would have went on Call Her Daddy and talked about her sex life, well, that would have made sense, right? I think it would have been distasteful for a presidential candidate, but it would have, okay, this is the milieu, this is the subject matter of the podcast. She wants to talk about the subject matter of the podcast. But what she did instead was try to go on, she's finding places where they're just going to treat her
Throw her softballs.
well, not even softballs. They're going to treat her like she's already the president. They're going to treat her like she is this honored guest that they can't ask any questions of. And I find that to be abhorrent and despicable. We need journalists to start writing stories as, why is Kamala Harris hiding from the press? They won't do it because they're a bunch of scared little cowards that put Trump not winning ahead of doing their damn job.
But I think
and
the
that
only
is
way
a
that could
recipe
ever
for
happen
American
again
disaster.
is if corporate entities don't own media outlets. Just so long as corporate
I
financial
don't think it's
giants
capitalism.
own media outlets, they're going to always be slanted.
No, I think
They're going to always have
there's
slanted
always
reporting.
going to be slant until
And when it comes to
consumer say-
advertisement dollars on those networks, they're going to be slanted.
Well, but there's always going to be some slant, but it's never been so blatant or bold as it has been in the last 20 years, where the modern mainstream journalists, and you use the air quotes, have just decided we're going to throw in for one team. And you see that also in academia. You used to have ideological diversity in universities across this country. Go try to be a conservative professor at any college in this country, with the exception of maybe BYU and Liberty, you're going to get run off on the rails.
But let me say
it's
this.
the same thing. You go try to be a
If there
conservative
was,
at the
if
LA
there was
Times,
allegations
they're
out
not
there,
hiring you.
if there were allegations that seemed to be factual, that Mrs. Trump was involved in some sexual abuse of any human being, it would be all over the news.
Well, it wasn't sexual; it was physical abuse. But
any
yes,
type of assault,
it would be all
it'd be all over the
I mean,
news.
she just gave an interview. Melania Trump just gave an interview where she was talking about in 2020 she got debanked. She lost access to banks because of banking because of who she was. That's terrifying as well. We have to remember as a country that it's okay to ideologically disagree, and it's okay to be on. And I don't consider myself a conservative.
But when the
it's
banks,
okay
when
for
the
people to be
banks, when the
conservative.
banks do that, that tells you the conspiracy is at the highest level.
Well, I don't know if it's a conspiracy. I think
When
it's
the
an
banks are
intolerance.
denying you
I
access
think-
to the use
I
them,
think it's intolerance, and it's absolutely absurd that
That's
Kamala
greater
is
than
going
intolerance.
on this podcast and not talking to journalists.
In today's Face Off, up.
Joker 2 being one of the biggest flops of 2024. Now, I knew after the premiere this week that the reviews are going to be mixed, mainly from the critics, but it's both from the critics and from the audience. Now, according to film updates, the opening domestic previews for Thursday was only 7 million at domestic. Now, the first movie was an automatic box office smash. Everyone had high expectations for the second one, so the estimates were higher. But now with this Thursday preview and the reviews, it's low. The movie costs about 200 million to make, therefore it has to make at least 400 million to break even, which is going to bring back the whole what's happening with the box office conversation again, sequels doing well or not. It's also currently at a critic score of 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, and there's 120 reviews. This is bad. Most of the negative reviews that I'm hearing from are from people who are fans of the Joker and the DC universe. If you watch Pay or Wait on YouTube, you know if Sharonda has this in the thumbnail, then this movie was a flop. Dear God. I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to watch this next Tuesday for Discount Movie Day.
I will tell you, Quanell, I went and saw it earlier this week on Sunday with my son and my dad. And Todd Phillips is it's not the movie, it's Todd Phillips, the director, the creator, the man who's had a string of hits, started off with A Hangover, finished with, until Deadpool 3, Joker, the first Joker, was the most profitable R-rated movie in history.
Heath Ledger.
And it was no, I'm not talking about the Batman Joker. I'm talking about his Joker movie with Joaquin Phillips.
Okay.
Was the most profitable R-rated movie in history until it was undone by Deadpool 3. Deadpool and Wolverine. But this movie was horrible. And it was horrible because very clearly Todd Phillips it was a musical. I mean, Lady Gaga, what a tremendous musician. Joaquin, not the best singer, but It was drab, it was dreary, it was pointless. It ended horribly. I don't want to be a spoiler. There was no real action. There was no narrative. It felt very clearly like this was Todd Phillips giving the finger to the people he ideologically disagreed with that loved the first Joker film, because there was a zeitgeist of conservatives and, more importantly, libertarians who thought that film spoke to him, and instead he just made this boring, disgusting, sad, depressing musical.
The best Joker film that I've ever watched was with Heath Ledger.
Oh, he was amazing.
With Batman.
He
that
was amazing.
cold-blooded.
He was amazing.
But then the second one was almost just as good. The previous one, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, it was
that
amazing.
one that he just made before this flop that you're talking about right now.
Trash.
That previous one where he was Murray, that was a hell of a film. In fact, that man was so deep into the Joker role,
what did you?
probably took him a whole year to get out of it.
What did you love about that movie?
I loved, you couldn't predict nothing. You couldn't predict anything that was going to take that movie. And when he went on the talk show, I can't remember the actor's name who played the casino, Robert De Niro, and he killed him on the show. Who in the hell would have thought he was going to do something like that? That was totally unpredictable. But it was such a good film. Now you're saying about this, and I haven't seen it yet. I was planning to see it. But, I've been watching the Dallas Cowboys, so it makes it hard to kind of leave the house and watch any damn thing after that.
Yeah, I know, it's depressing.
Yeah,
How
really
about the
depressing.
Texans, though? How about that C.J. Stroud, though? But, I mean, the truth is, this movie, what you loved about the first one was that it really, although the violence, it was an indictment of bullying and bad people, right? And people celebrated. Whereas this one was just Todd Phillips telling the fans of his first movie, I don't like you as a person, so I'm going to give you a movie that you're going to hate and it's not going to make any money.
Reading these reviews,
it's awful.
People who love the previous Joker film hate this one.
It was, and I couldn't wait to see this film. I personally like musicals. I'm a big fan of musical theater. This movie was horrible.
That's it for the Face Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.